and welcome to our Intellect and Intelligence webinar today. It's our inaugural webinar in this series. Our goal with this series of webinars is to provide an advanced perspective on AI in general, some practical applications of it, and the future of AI, in particular with the legal practice, and even more so with the intellectual property practice. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? Today, we're privileged to have with us Dr. Manjeet Rege. He's an acclaimed author, mentor, and thought leader in the realms of big data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. He serves as the professor of graduate programs in software and data science and is the director of the Center for Applied Artificial Intelligence at the University of St. Thomas. His expertise is widely recognized, and with frequent appearances on radio and television interviews, Dr. Rege's presentation today promises to be enlightening and will be expertly presented to us as well. So we also have with us the CEO of Eve Legal, Jay Madhuswaran. Jay brings a wealth of knowledge with over a decade of experience in integrating artificial intelligence into practical applications. His work began with his early contributions at Facebook and Rubrik, and he has continued to be a driving force in the AI space through his investments and his work with Lightspeed. Jay's crowning achievement, though, is the development of Eve. It's an innovative case assistant that revolutionizes efficiency and quality across legal processes. We look forward to Jay's insights on deploying AI in the legal domain and beyond. Also speaking today is a familiar face on our webinars, and that's Tom Marlowe. He's our Chief Technology Officer, and he is president of Black Hills IP Renewals. Tom has a rich history in the practice of IP law and the associated fields. Tom is the former chief patent counsel at Fairchild Semiconductor, and he previously worked in private practice with Schwegman, Lundberg, and Listner. His unique perspective at the intersection of AI and intellectual property and legal technology will undoubtedly enrich our discussion today. So with that, let's talk about what we're going to do. We're going to traverse the landscape of AI from its theoretical underpinnings to its practical applications. We will begin with Dr. Rege, and then we'll proceed to Jay, followed by Tom. So we'll explore how AI is transforming industries and what the future may hold for this dynamic field in general, and in particular with regard to the practice of law. So with that, Dr. Rege, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jim, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. So I'm going to start off with giving everybody kind of a lay of the land as far as AI is concerned. Here, these different circles that you see are the different types of AI that is out there. So in the past 2 years, of course, we have heard a lot about generative AI. A lot of the work that has happened in the industry for many years falls under this domain called supervised learning. When you hear about market segmentation, customer segmentation, that falls under unsupervised learning, and applications of reinforcement learning are a lot of applications in video games as well as self-driving cars as well. So generative AI is a application or a sub problem of what supervised learning is. So before we get to generative AI, supervised learning, understanding that is essential. At the very basic level, supervised learning is you have some input and you're trying to learn the mapping from an input to an output. So here are a number of examples of that input to output mapping. So the idea is, given the data on the left, can an AI model learn to predict the output that you see on the right in each of these scenarios. So I'll not go through each one of them, but you see all of these applications we kind of make use of on a daily basis. Given an email that arrives, you have a spam classifier that is trying to detect, is this a spam or not? So an AI kind of goes through a learning process in terms of detecting the two kinds of outcomes. You can have more than two outcomes as well, but the output basically has to be categorized in one of the existing bins. And for this to happen, the data for this learning to happen, the every example needs to be labeled. So a human has to many times provide an example about this email is a spam, this email is not a spam. And over that learning process, the AI model ends up figuring out when do we predict it's a spam and when do we predict it is not a spam. Now, what we found starting around 2010 was that for a lot of applications, we had a lot of data. But even as we fed it more data, its performance wasn't getting that much better if we were training on small AI models. Think in terms of memory, compute, and also complexity of the model. So, if you were building a speech recognition system, even as your AI listened to tens of thousands of, even thousands of hours of data, that's a lot of data, but it did not get that much more accurate compared to a system that listened to only a smaller amount of audio data. And that's that red line, small AI models that you see on your screen. But what more and more researchers started to realize through this period is if you were to train a very large AI model, meaning again, AI model that is fast on a very powerful computer with a lot more memory, then its performances, and of course, if you fed it a lot more data, the performance would get better and better. So large scale supervised learning remains important today, but this idea of very large models, so when you hear about LLMs, a large language model or a large video model, is how you got to generative AI that you see today. At the core of every AI generator is a foundation model. Foundation models are a class of powerful machine learning models that are differentiated by their ability to be pre-trained on vast amounts of data in order to perform a wide range of downstream tasks. So these tasks could include text generation, data summarization, information extraction, question and answer responses, and chatbot interactions. In contrast, traditional machine learning models are trained to perform a specific task from a data set. So let's review some key differences between a traditional machine learning model and a foundation model. A traditional machine learning models are typically siloed to perform specific tasks like analyzing text for sentiment, classifying images, and forecasting trends. In order to achieve each task, customers need to gather label data, train a model, and then deploy that model. The size and general purpose nature of a foundation model make them very different from a traditional machine learning model. With foundation models, instead of gathering label data and training multiple models, you use the same pre-trained foundation model to adapt to several tasks. So foundation models can also be customized to perform domain-specific functions. such as in the legal domain, for example. Um, so, often you hear about a number of use cases. So I'm going to, speak about some of these use cases from a legal perspective as well. So a generative AI could be used to enhance a customer experience. So for example, an automated drafting of a legal patent. Generative AI can assist patent attorneys in drafting applications more efficiently. By analyzing existing patterns, legal documents and relevant technical literature, AI can generate initial drafts of patent applications. Um, Summarization and analysis of legal documents. Generative AI can be utilized to summarize and analyze large volumes of legal documents. Um, in terms of boosting the employee productivity, patent attorneys spend a significant amount of time drafting patent applications, which require meticulous detail to legal and technical standards. This process can be time consuming. So by employing generative AI to automate initial drafting can greatly enhance that. Also utilizing natural language processing models trained on vast patent databases, the AI can generate customized drafts based on the prompts that a lawyer might have given. So machine learning models can be trained on historical patent data and patent office decisions to predict the likelihood of a patent being granted or rejected. And by analyzing factors such as the language used in the patent application, the similarity to existing patents and previous patent office decisions, AI can provide insights into the potential, success rate of a patent application. Now, with the evolution of generative AI, it has now become possible to deploy a particular use case very, very quickly. So in the past, if you had to uh, develop an application for detecting a sentiment in a customer email, you would have to collect a data like this, where you remember that A to B mapping that I mentioned earlier. So you have the actual text, and then you have a label. You have the actual text and you have the label. So you have this entire labeled data that is collected beforehand. Then you train a model, and then you deploy the model. So this entire process in the past used to take a number of months. I mean, getting that level of data, collecting that data with an appropriate label, making sure that those labels are appropriate, and then training that model and deploying that model was a time consuming process. But now with generative AI, uh, you are moving from a supervised learning scenario to a prompt based development scenario. And in a matter of hours or days, you can achieve the same use case, that is detecting a sentiment, without going through months of uh, hard work. So just to give you an idea about the amount of code that you would write based on supervised learning would be all of this, but the amount of code you would write just based on a prompt-based development would be only this much. And this particular function over here is making a call to OpenAI's application programmer interface, and this is a prompt that I would like you to classify the following as a positive or negative, and this text is then passed, and I get a response back very quickly. So just to give you a quick example of this here, I'm just going to show this to you in a minute. So what I have is that same code that I showed you. And so if I run this, I get a positive sentiment, right, as a response back. And I have not trained this model, but if I change this to I hate the quality of this product, not worth the price, and if I run this, I now get a negative sentiment. So I never trained this model. All that I'm doing is with this function, I'm calling OpenAI's GPT 3.5 Turbo. So that is the power of generative AI. And, in the past, we have all seen examples of from a prompt generating new text, from a prompt generating new images, but now we are also able to describe what you want to see in a video. And we are now entering an era of prompt to video. So I'll just show you a few examples of text prompts to video. What is hard to believe is how realistic all of these videos look. And all of these videos are really, really amazing. And we can watch through all of them. But what we have even more amazing lined up are our next two speakers, and especially our next speaker. Let me hand it over to Jay. Uh, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reggie. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Jay. What I wanted to walk through is try to connect the dots between the amazing improvements in AI that Dr. Reggie went over towards where you can actually use it in legal today alongside challenges that are available. And I also had some fun things to share and show as well. Might be difficult to beat the dancing otter, but I'll do my best. Oh, actually, give me 1 second. Okay, I'm assuming people can see this. Great. So in terms of generative AI, it actually comes in many different forms. One of the most useful forms for the legal industry is going to be text. As Dr. Reggie mentioned, where it's going to be most useful is things around text summarization, text extraction, text generation, and understanding. And how this technology has changed from the AI of the past was previously to do document automation and document generation, you needed to train high fidelity models with significant amounts of data, and you had to deal with every single variation and layout that existed in that document type. And this is what led to poor qualities of accuracy and deployment speeds for the legal industry. With generative AI, as you saw in the demo, it now becomes instantaneous to do things like classification and extraction. The other areas which we're starting to see also start penetrating the legal industry slowly are things around image generation, which involves both generating an entirely new image from scratch, in addition to understanding contents about an image. Alongside, interestingly, even the image generation is also being used for document extraction, being able to dump, a patent and actually be able to extract out, for example, the figures in a patent. The other two areas that have been making a lot of progress in the last 3 to 6 months have been in the audio and video side. And what's really impressive on the audio side is now both speech to text and text to speech has really advanced to the point where it is starting to near human levels of comprehension and capabilities. And on the video side, as you saw in the demo from Dr. Reggie, it's able to actually generate really, really robust and high quality videos. What I wanted to do is actually go through and highlight a few ways in which you can actually use this technology today and what it's good at and what it's bad at. We'll cover all of that. So first, I wanted to go and show you about text generation. So this is Eve, our platform. Under the hood, it uses all the generative AI technologies out there, but this is a sample client transcript call, right? And let's start off with the basics. So what does text extraction look like? Now you can actually just upload a full transcript of a 30-minute call and get the transcripts. This has also been automatically generated, and just ask it questions, right? So if you want to pull out what is the name of a plaintiff, let's say, it'll be able to go crawl through this information and intelligently identify even the two speakers that were here and understand what the plaintiff's name is just based on the text available, right? And previously, this would have been quite hard to do, where you might have had to pass it off to an offshore team, or do it yourself, or train a really complex AI model to do so. But this is just the beginning. What's also really interesting and fascinating about this technology is now you can merge document understanding, document extraction, and text generation all at once to do some more complicated things. So for example, oftentimes after a client intake call, you start working on or produce some sort of case file or a case overview. So let's see how that looks like, right? So what you can actually say is you can, in our product, it's called a playbook, but you can tell Eve what you want to actually extract and what document you want to produce at the end of it. And it's able to intelligently go and understand what you mean by a brief summary, what types of things are you looking for in the overview. It even produces like a case timeline for you, and reads the entire document and actually orders things. Also understands, it understands legal domains. It knows what witnesses are, and it tells you if it's been mentioned at all. And it even helps you point out other pieces of evidence that can be connected to the client. So what's happening here is multiple things at once, right? So it's able to understand both what this transcript is about, along with any other file you upload around this particular case. And it's able to go and generate exactly the document you want out of it. And what's cool is it doesn't just stop here, right? So you can continue with the workflow based on all the work you've already done. And it understands exactly what you're trying to do. So to follow up, your next step might be, let's just say you're drafting a complaint. You can actually just ask Eve, can you help me? So now, like what used to be potentially hours of work is now done for you in the time of 2 minutes, right? So this is kind of the basics of where this technology is going to be used. Today, where we're seeing it used literally in every single part of legal processes where documents are involved in some way, shape, or form. That's the most obvious place to use it today. Where people are seeing a lot of benefits are in patent prosecution across the board, in the case dealing with their case lifecycle, all the way from case and client intake to doing in-depth cause of action analysis, to generating complaints and demand letters and all the other things in the legal process alongside preparing for trials as well. But you'll see that it more or less generates an entire entire complaint for you, and you can even dig a bit deeper, right? So it's like you can go deeper into wrongful termination if you want to. So that's the basics of text generation. This is the number one place where I expect it to be used quite rapidly in the legal industry. But it doesn't stop here, right? So after this, what can also happen is video and image comprehension is also improved. So how does that look like for the legal industry? Well, one, there are many instances where images are actually quite relevant, right? So if you're working on PI or employment law use cases, you oftentimes get images you have to understand and estimate damages, et cetera. Or in the patent side, what you can do is actually upload a sample image, and this is ChatGPT. In this case, I uploaded a sample from a patent I found. Bonus points if someone can message me which patent this is from or what this is about. And what it's actually able to do is more advanced object detection. So it's able to read this image and understand and segment what all these components are and utilize its understanding of text to be able to connect the two and tell you exactly what this image is about. So this is a piece of technology that got advanced around middle of last year and is starting to basically start making its way through legal use cases that around more document review and damage estimations, again, client intake, generation of files, etc. Now, where it kind of falls apart is in the image generation side of things. If you're trying to create net new images, this is where there's still quite some work cut out for today. So I'll show you kind of what I did here. I actually asked it to make a sample image removing the gas cylinder from this particular invention. And it created something totally random. Right. So these are some of the limitations of the image side of things. So that's how image understanding and generation works. Lastly, what I wanted to show is there's also been innovation on the text side. So this is a total sample, but I wanted to show you a sample of how this looks like. This is not in our product. This was on a hackathon that we did, but I thought it'd be fun to show what it looks like. So what's happening here is we're actually conducting a client intake with Eve, and we gave Eve a voice. So being able to tie together its ability to understand and respond to text with responding back. So Eve is actually going to talk to you, and David is a human being who's going to talk back. So I'll just play a short clip of this, but you'll get a sense for where this technology is and why I think we'll start seeing some signs of this being used in the legal industry this year. And please, someone message me if you can't hear it.
Hi, this is Eve here to help you with your labor and employment case. Are you a new client or an existing client?
I'm a new client.
Great. Could I please have your name and phone number?
My name is David. My phone number is 408-1234567.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that. We specialize in employment law in California and Texas. Which state do you reside in?
I'm in California.
Perfect. Now, could you tell me which of the following employment situations best applies to you? Wrongful termination, hostile work environment, or pay issues?
It's probably wrongful termination.
I see. Can you?
There we go. I'm not going to play the whole thing because it goes on for a while, but that's just a sample of what can be done, right? So if you think about what's happening there, it's been that engineering has been able to tie together all the different components in generative AI thus far around its ability to transcribe text to speech, speech to text, do that in a super fast way so you can actually have a conversation alongside text comprehension to be able to respond back with intelligent questions that further goes deeper into making sure you conduct a really high quality client intake. And you can kind of imagine where that's going to sneak down, right? So if you need to go and ask your client for additional details on a particular invention or additional details further down in the discovery process, if you're doing litigation, sometimes those calls can go on for few hours, depending on what you're doing. And you just kind of have to sit there listening sometimes. And depending on how you utilize the technology and the service, it could drastically help save a lot of time. All right, so all of this sounds good, looks impressive. What is going to be happening in the legal industry? Let's go back. So there's a lot of challenges left. So as we saw with the image, it's very, very reliant on what Dr. Regge actually referred to as prompt engineering. So prompt engineering is this aspect of being able to be super, super precise with exactly what you're looking for to get what you want. But what gets more challenging is there are limitations with what the technology can do, particularly more on the image side, as text has improved a lot significantly in the last year. And to work around the limitations, you have to get even more creative with how you do prompting. And with text, the same thing applies, right? So it's quite literal. You can almost think about it like you're telling a kid what to do. They'll follow exactly what you say, and the results might not be what you expect, is kind of what happens. And this results in behavior that you may have heard about called hallucinations, where it is so eager to respond back to you that it starts potentially making things up if it doesn't work. So simple examples of this that you might have heard about is cases where it actually makes up case law. That can be fixed. I'll talk about that later. Or if you don't include things like, hey, tell me what supports the causes of action of wrongful termination in this case, if any exist. If you don't include the if any exist, it's possible that it actually does make up things. Again, without if it's been engineered poorly. And the other pieces that it struggles with today, even though it looks super impressive with what it can do and summarize, is it does miss the reasoning capabilities that humans have, right? So it's very good at seeing exactly what's there and being able to utilize the vast amount of information it's been trained on to then summarize or generate text that best matches it. What it's not capable of doing is being able to take your directive and break it down into smaller steps that you're kind of doing in your head to generate that response. So what that means is it will not be able to handle things of the complexity of, let's say, client intake to just generate me a demand letter and to go talk to my opposing counsel and make sure it closes. That requires too much planning and too much breaking down of tasks that is not quite able to do yet. Lastly, this is a challenge that's been improving, but as you can imagine, it's been trained on lots of words and text. It does have challenges with numbers. Those are kind of the main challenges I would expect you to see. On the audio side and video side, these are just new. There's a lot of unknowns with how good they are. And the main challenge that I would expect is it's going to lack customization if it makes it into any vendor solution. The summary is, as you've seen, I'm not sure what everyone's reaction is. Maybe it's skepticism, maybe it's fear, excitement. I'm not sure. But I think the reality is that it is getting a little too good not to use, where even today, but certainly in a year or two, if you're not using it, there are certainly going to be other people using it that are going to be achieving a lot more for a lot less time, whether that means making more money, saving time so they can go on vacation, or what have you, expanding their practice, etc. It is basically getting to be a technology that is going to make its way down to everything you're using, whether you like to or not. So you might as well get an early start using it. And what I wanted to provide is what to expect from the solutions that you're going to see out there. So in terms of how this market is starting to get categorized, there's a few different players that you will end up dealing with eventually, no matter what, right? So one is foundational models and related players. So these are people like ChatGPT, Gemini, and now there's a long list of others. Microsoft has their own, Quora has their own. There's another company called Perplexity. There's so many now that are building off of these core foundational models to do things like more advanced search, features similar to ChatGPT where you're able to go ask it generic questions, etc. And the main challenges I would expect to run into with these providers is it's not going to be tailor-made for the legal industry. What that means is, one, they may or may not all be on top of not utilizing your data to train central models, which in the legal space matters quite a bit, because what happens is all this data point actually goes back to train a central model. And given it's a predictive AI, it will try to complete someone else's next word. So there is a chance it starts utilizing that information if you use to train your central model to leak things that would otherwise be protected by client attorney confidentiality. Secondly, all the challenges we went over where it can hallucinate and you have to get very literal with the prompting, all of that requires focusing on a use case and practice area, or in this case, legal industry, to make significantly better. And without that, you have to make compromises on the engineering layer to make it still easy to use and account for a lot of use cases. Right. A very simple example here is if you're writing a creative artistic blog, you actually want hallucinations, right? So you want to come up with a lot of new ideas that you have not seen in the data set. And on the other side, if you are trying to prepare a really clear-cut financial document, you need super accurate extraction of data. Both of those will require incredibly different tuning of the foundational models to achieve, which central players will likely never get there, and they've also said that's not their focus area. However, what is good to do is if you haven't had experience using any generative AI at all, it's a fantastic place to start for things outside of law. If you have just general questions around the house, maybe responding to your kid's teacher or something along those lines, it's a great place to start and familiarize yourself with all the limitations and benefits of generative AI without really taking any risk. The second place where I expect to make down is, maybe you're already seeing this, but a lot of existing vendors will be implementing generative AI features into their existing products. Where I expect it to happen the most quickly would be things around legal research. So players like Westlaw, LexisNexis, many of them have already started using generative AI to fix some of their product shortcomings around needing to go crazy with Boolean logic searches. And instead they're able to use the fact that you can type in things and get back a list of results, right? And contract review is another one where it's going to make its way down quite quickly, where all the existing vendors are going to be making their products a bit better. And then you have net new vendors like us and others that are built from a ground up from a generative AI stack. And what I expect to see here is these vendors tackling a new world where you take the existence of this technology for granted and reimagine processes to create not just like a 10% improvement in your workflows, but potentially a 10x once. And here the fight and battle is quite early, and I expect it to kind of heat up over the course of time, just given how it's so easy to get to kind of the demoable state, but getting to a usable state requires so much time. So I would expect some of the challenges to exist around evaluating these vendors and actually buying them, where the easiest way to do it, my recommendation, is to have an ROI story. Look at what your life looks like after using a tool and before using a tool, and get systematic about tracking it if you can. That's ultimately like a safe way to make sure you're making the right decisions for you and your firm. That's pretty much all I had. If there's no questions, I'll pass it over to
Jay. There were, let's see, two things. First,
yes,
was that a paintball trigger? Is that what somebody asked if it was a paintball trigger?
It is not. It is
For wine.
Have you guys used? Oh, you got it, Corvin.
Okay. You,
Sounds
you
good.
inject the gas inside your wine
Nice.
bottle to
Nice.
preserve your wine. So yeah. So the other one here, why don't I just give this to you real quick, and then we'll go on to Tom. This is from an anonymous attendee, and he said, "My first instinct on Eve is in the output. I'm concerned if the uncertainty I feel that I have to review the original document personally to be sure that Eve captured all the details. How does the platform overcome that uncertainty?"
So there's a few things. This is where we do heavy engineering to ensure that the risk of hallucination and accuracy of results is as high as possible. So what goes on here is just heavy engineering like work, right? So prompt tuning under the hood, fine tuning of models, curating and picking the right ones. All of this is kind of happening under the hood to reduce the likelihood of that happening. Secondly, what we actually encourage is it's somewhat vaguely similar to hiring a brand new associate or a paralegal, where when you start off, you are double checking the work to make sure you're building trust in the system and you are understanding what the capabilities are. And over time, you start understanding what it's good at and what it's bad at. And oftentimes you will realize you don't actually have to double check the work. And I'm not sure, Jim, if you have a different or better answer to that from what you've seen.
Yeah, I think I have essentially the same answer. It's, when you work with different team members over time, you figure out what they're good at and where they need a little bit more supervision. And normally, just the employees that work for you or team members that work with you, they are usually pretty consistent in what they're good at and what they're maybe not so good at. And I think the AI models are pretty good in that regard. And we learn how to prompt it. And if you don't, necessarily, if you're concerned that a prompt returns something other than a complete or optimal response, it's pretty easy to submit additional prompts to flesh out the points that you're not sure about, or to, ask, in the summary, ask things like, how much of this document did you consider, right? And typically, the responses you'll get back from the tools I've used, including our own, they're pretty accurate in what they're telling you they've considered. So if you find something that hasn't been considered, you tell it to consider it, and typically, it will. So remain vigilant, but just because you find something in your double checking that wasn't considered, that doesn't mean that you're done using the tool. You just tell it to consider that portion of the document as well and update the answer, the response as needed. So there's a few different ways to go about that. That's, we've given you two. Jay gave one, and I gave another. That was just kind of built on Jay's, but and if you find more, or different ways to go about that to double check the work using the tool itself, whatever tool you're using, share those. We'd be happy to hear those as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another good kind of thing to keep in mind here is a lot of these tools, especially if you're creating content to be submitted as official filings, things that you're putting your signature on. As an attorney, you're going to be wanting to give those review regardless. Thinking about, okay, if this was created by, say, a junior associate, what level of review would I want to put on it? It's something above nothing, right? And it's in a lot of these cases, the goal isn't to eliminate the attorney from doing the job, but it's to augment or make it much, much more efficient for the attorney to do the job. So especially at the beginning, but even as you go along and understand kind of how the thing responds, there's an element of review that you want and pretty much need to be doing along the way.
So why don't we just jump in here and just make sure that everybody saw the answer that I provided online. Because there's just another question along these lines. the question that just came back in, it's similar to the one earlier, says, I may have missed it, but how do I ensure that I'm protecting my IP and avoiding insider trading issues by using an LLM? So using Eve and using our tool, when you submit any information, whether it's a document you upload, a prompt or a prompt you provide, and then the response that you get back, all of that data that you know going in either direction, either up to the system or back to you, all of that information is confidential to you. It is not shared. It is not used to train any models. Nobody else accesses that data. It is completely secure and encrypted in both directions. So, and then in these tools, in particular Eve and Auto from Black Hills, when you create a project, the data that's within one project is not shared with other projects. And when you're done with that project, you can delete the project and all that data is just obliterated. And so when you think about this, you have these different projects that you work within. The data within one project is segregated to just that project. That's more secure than the mind of an attorney, and like a patent attorney. You learn information from multiple different clients, and over time, you kind of start forgetting about where that information actually came from, which client it came from, which case it came from, and so on. And it just kind of all blends together. That issue does not exist in the AI tools that we're talking about here, the Eve and Auto from Black Hills. There's no bleed over of data or information of any type, no bleed over of responses and so on. Now you can share prompts amongst your team members, but with those prompts, it's not client information that's shared. It's only the prompt. You can set up stored prompts. We call them skills, and underneath skills, we have two different types. We have playbooks and tasks, but you can share those, but the information that you apply those against is not shared. So everything's secure, no sharing of information, and happy to have any conversations that anybody would like to have about that to explain that further. So, all right, Tom.
All right. Yeah. So thanks. This is all great material to follow in this line of technical discussion. I want to touch just a little bit on some detail of the application that we apply here at Black Hills AI. So computational intelligence generally is a critical component to how we operate. It serves to increase speed and efficiency, but also, and very importantly, to avoid human errors typically that you might associate with like high density data processing, common theme that we have in IP. We do a lot of what you might call like behind the scenes document and data processing for docketing in order to identify documents and extract data. Firstly, we leverage what's known as an expert system, a set of complex rules and computational logic to do our primary data extraction and document identification. So expert systems, they're leveraged here by us because of what I guess really our absolute need for precision. When we want to drive automation with speed, variability is not really a good option. I like to say in this respect, we're chasing the asymptote to perfection with this process. Okay, so machine learning, it's great, but guesses and suggestions aren't going to cut it for primary IP data categorization. Okay, supervised machine learning is used, though, kind of what we might think of as a next line of defense. We have this incredible amount of data from docketing that we've done over the past over a decade. This labeling, categorization, expert docketer identification is used to drive the creation of our own ML models that we run on the data that we process daily. Again, this is not used for primary identification, but might be used for double checking the rules that we've run, identifying anomalies, catching logic issues, that kind of thing. We try to take advantage of every option that we can. We've played with kind of the more unsupervised, the generative AI for some of this process with mixed results as well. It's better in other areas, like we've seen in the presentation from Jay just a minute ago, and that's where this generative component comes in more value when you've got a human working with the results, or where you have more kind of flexibility with how the process moves. Think about suggestions or drafts as opposed to primary content driving and automation, where specificity is pretty critical. So in this realm, though, where we are active is not so much on the model building side. Our contribution to the process comes from the data that we handle, how we handle it, and our ability to streamline workflows. So we're at Black Hills thinking a lot about how can we get the appropriate context to the engine so that it's convenient as possible for the end user. What prepackaged data and prompts or prompt queues can we provide? How can we provide APIs with customer data to integrate with other tools? This is where we're focusing our time and effort. And for us, the key there is making things easy to use. And we can leverage the constantly evolving backend technology that continues to evolve and impress, which is pretty cool. I do have to say, the fact that you all are here for these discussions definitely puts you at the front of the pack. It's a great time to be learning about how to best use this technology. And what we discuss and the applications that we're looking at today are going to change tomorrow and the day after. So keeping on top of this is definitely going to be to everybody's benefit. And from there, we've covered a few questions. I would really want to take the time now, because I'm seeing more engagement here, to open the floor to questions for our experts while we have them here. And let's go take a look at some of those. Let's see. So one question that I see, and we talked, I think both Manjeet and Jay mentioned kind of the continued progress we're seeing from AI. Do either of you guys have any concerns about some of the talk about watering down in AI? So basically like AI learning from AI responses as more and more of those become prevalent on the internet, kind of like a photocopy effect?
Well, there is an active area of research or an approach in recent times, especially with generative AI, about can we learn, can the next model learn from the output of a previous model? Now, just as an academic exercise, that may work, and it has shown promises, but it does kind of lead to legal IP issues as well. And some companies are also talking about that. But it is something that is looked at from a model learning perspective.
Mm-hmm. I guess, and then along those lines, there's been talk around restrictions, certainly in the copyright space. Are you seeing any, or do you have any concerns about some of these models being able to improve as quickly as they have with some of the potential restrictions to content that are that we're starting to see kind of show up in the courts, at least? And Any thoughts in that space?
Yeah, I mean, as of today, we haven't seen kind of a blockage in terms of the progress that we have seen with generative AI. But, you know, the EU just passed an AI law, and if something like that comes around in US, and there are a lot more restrictions on fine-tuning your foundation model for your own purpose internally and what data you'll be using. I think that is where there is a restrict. And if you put restrictions, I think that is where we might see the progress kind of slowing down. But right now, I don't think we have reached that stage yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
go ahead, Jim.
yeah, so I have a question here that I'll offer up to Jay. So earlier we mentioned that information exchanged between an end user and Black Hills or Eve is confidential. If we leverage a foundational model, how can we guarantee that the owner of the foundational model will also preserve confidentiality, in particular with OpenAI?
It's a great question. So in short, all the providers, they do have, call it more expensive engagements where they do offer contractual guarantees. And some of them also have technical guarantees that they will preserve confidentiality. So Eve has signed up for a very expensive license with all the language model providers to ensure this happens. And and Otto also benefits from that.
Very good. Thanks, Jay. Let's see. There's another one along these same lines. Let's see.
And Jim, I'll just add, this is
Sure.
a really good line of questions that any attorney or anyone working with confidential, proprietary type of information should be asking, because the answer is not always the same between the different systems, between the different services, between the different end products that are out there. Obviously, the folks on this call, we are focused on legal, so these are very important items to have addressed up front. But there's a lot of tools that are out there. So if you're evaluating other tools, these are the precise questions that you want and need to be asking to make sure that you aren't inadvertently exposing some material that you shouldn't be.
So one other follow up on this, in the context of Eve and Black Hills, where we're not training, or the models are not being trained based on customer information. How do we then improve via machine learning? Does that make sense, Jay? Are you able to handle that one too?
Yeah, I can handle that one. So the machine learning aspect, what we do several things to do that, right? One is there's significant amounts that are not machine learning focused, but still requires engineering efforts to improve. One of which is the challenges we went over before, where in the legal industry, it is important to get the information right and accurate, so you don't spend a bunch of time double checking the work as someone else asked previously. And how this work happens is a combination of non-machine learning stuff. So for example, we actually utilize our own data set of factual case law that's verified, and we compare it and structure the responses in such a way that you almost guarantee that it's accurate. And the second layer that happens is something called prompt engineering. And in this layer, you end up making sophisticated data pipelines that take a user input, and without using any external data at all, but just legal knowledge that our lawyers have kind of made, that doesn't use any data from your environment at all, to significantly improve performance. So how improvement here looks like is actually when you say there's been a bad response, improvements are made to the central model that doesn't utilize your data, but understands enough to say, we're trying to reduce the likelihood of bad responses. And that's enough. So we don't have to use your data for it, but we can look and ensure that the rates of bad responses is going down over time. That's how it's done today. I think over time, we expect this to evolve because this answer is a bit complicated. There's many different types of training when you get down to the technical side. There's fine tuning, there's model training, there's prompt tuning, there's other types of machine learning models. There's things that Dr. Regge mentioned where you can actually generate kind of fake data to fine tune models without using anyone's data. All of these are other techniques that are available as well to make things improve.
Yeah, and I was just going to add exactly the same point that GM mentioned at the end, that you can use generative AI for generating synthetic data, and that synthetic data can then, used for improving your models as well.
Well, that sounds great. I think we've probably gone long enough today. I don't see any more questions right now. So why don't we just go ahead and call it? And I want to thank all of our presenters today. Dr. Regge, Jay, Tom, thank you very much. We've been excited to have the three of you join us, and all of you who have joined us on the webinar today to listen in and watch the slides and such. I appreciate you joining us. We've been excited to have you here. We're excited to continue this series. We plan to do it on essentially a quarterly basis. We'll publish the schedule on this very soon. We have the date set, and we'll have some other speakers join us as well throughout. So we hope that you found this webinar useful to help build your knowledge and understanding and appreciation for what AI is, what it can do for you in your legal practice, and in other things. The other thing to remember that when you do have a powered subscription to this type of technology, when those questions come in from your kids about whatever it is they're working on in their homework, it's going to give you pretty good stuff to respond to them with, and so your kids will think much more highly of you with your insightful responses powered by AI. So just don't let them in on the knowledge that you're using it yourself. So keep it a mystery. So anyway, well, thank you, and we appreciate you joining us once more. We hope you found it informative, maybe even inspiring to modify your practice a bit. So yeah, tune in again soon, and we look forward to talking to you. If you have any questions about AI, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to, if you just send an email to info@blackhills.ai, info@blackhills.ai, that'll get its way to me, and I can route your question or get back to you in any way as needed. So again, thank you, and look forward to having you join us again soon. Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.